It's time for Twit This Week in Tech. We have a really fun panel for you. Mike Elgin is back. Jeff Jarvis from Twig is visiting. And Owen Thomas from the San Francisco Chronicle. He's kind of a legend in tech circles. We've got a lot to talk about. Jeff Bezos is stepping down. Is his successor up to the job? We'll talk about Apple and their AR glasses. We've got some of the details. And we'll also talk a little bit about that new bill against Section 230. Mike Masnick calls it a dumpster fire. We'll let Jeff Jarvis vent next.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Twit, This Week in Tech. Episode 809, recorded Sunday, February 7th, 2021. I'm only 10 minutes away. This Week in Tech is brought to you by ExpressVPN. Stop handing over your personal data to big tech. Protect yourself with the VPN I trust to keep me safe online. For 3 extra months free with a 1-year package, go to expressvpn.com/twit. And by ZipRecruiter. Hiring is challenging, especially with everything else you have to consider today. But there's one place where hiring is simple, fast, and smart. That place is ZipRecruiter. Try ZipRecruiter free at ziprecruiter.com/twit. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. And by Barracuda. Hackers are always looking for the weakest link in your security configuration, especially in your email security. Barracuda's new threat analyzer tool helps you gain visibility into your particular vulnerabilities. Visit barracuda.com/twit. And by Babbel. Babbel has made learning new languages fun and easy with bite-sized lessons you'll actually use in the real world. Purchase a 3-month Babbel subscription and get an additional 3 months free. Go to babbel.com and use the promo code TWIT. It's time for Twit, This Week in Tech, the show where we run through all the ads as quickly as we can so we can watch the Super Bowl. No, it's not that. It's not that show. We have carefully arranged a panel of people who couldn't care less about the Super Bowl. Brilliant. Starting with Mike Elgin, who is still homebound in San Jose. No digital nomad he. But where are you going to go do the gastronomad thing sometime soon?
Yeah, we're hoping for summer. We're hoping for Europe in the summer. Nice. Then after that, we're hoping that because both the U.S. and France have both said that they're going to be fully vaccinated, which means all the people who are willing to be vaccinated by mid to late summer. So we're counting on that. Come on.
Provence
Macron,
is on the calendar.
Right.
Gastronomad.net. Click the experiences. They're doing Provence. They're going to do Morocco, Oaxaca, Barcelona. It all involves food, wine, and good friends. It's going to be a lot of fun.
The Oaxaca one is filling up, so I think we have one more spot left for that. Yeah, that's during Day of the Dead, and
that'll be so
cool. We have all the Top Chef and the thing. That's a really good one. If you are quick, you can get in on that one.
Get in on it quick. Gastronomad.net. Also with us, normally we see him on a Wednesday. He is the Leonard Town Professor for Journalistic Innovation at the Craig Newmark Graduate School of Journalism at the City University of New York. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Jeff Jarvis. Hey,
Another
Jeff.
Guy who doesn't care about football. Good to see you.
Yeah, I
was honored. I thought, oh, good, I get to sit at the grown-ups table. I was so happy. And my wife said, oh, yeah, Super Bowl. They couldn't find anybody else.
No, that's not what happened. Your wife is mean. No, Jason asked me a while ago. She said, what about getting some of the other hosts on the Twit? And I said, well, I don't want to overwork them, but if somebody's willing to once in a while, I think it's good. I mean, you do a lot of, you do Twig every week, so I don't want to burn you out or anything, but it's great to have you. We always
burn out your public on me. Yes.
No. Nobody's saying, too much Jeff Jarvis. But we did, and the other reason I wanted Mike and Jeff on is because we have a newbie, and I always like to, if we've got somebody on his first time on Twit, I want to make sure we've surrounded him in the calm, cool waters of Twit regulars.
Ha!
I thought it was for the hazing.
And the hazing. Owen Thomas is here, business editor at the San Francisco Chronicle, but a long time tech reporter from all over. In fact, I just found out you were a regular on our Silicon Spin Roundtable show, which is basically Twit for TV on Tech TV way back in the day, 21 years ago.
21.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you.
I'm having flashbacks.
Yeah, wow. Owen says,
young Owen.
Yeah, he doesn't look like he's that old. He must have been like 12 when he was on. I don't understand how that happened.
I'll tell you how it happened. Kathy Brooks, who was the booker, knew me.
She of the leather pants, yes.
Yes, and she knew that I was working at Red Herring, whose office was 3 blocks away. So if someone canceled or something came up, she could call me. I'd be there in 10 minutes. That's how it happened.
So really, on your resume, doesn't like football and within 10 minutes can be here is a very good thing to have on the resume. Who was it? Tony Perkins that started Red Herring?
He did, yeah.
I loved
back in the day.
Loved that. It was back in the day. It was startups before the bubble burst. Kind of.
I mean, if you remember Jason Ponton with a ponytail, then then you were around in the 90s.
Yeah, what did happen to Tony? Is he still around?
Yeah, he's I see him pop up on LinkedIn. He's still working some conference and good. Meet up ideas. Yeah.
Yeah. So there is a big football game later in the day, I believe. And it's funny because I always, at least for a while, we would always say, oh, and guess what tech company is going to be buying a $5 million ad on the Super Bowl? Now it's more like, guess which tech company is not buying a $5 million ad? But remember, what was the .com that was the first .com to buy a Super Bowl ad? Was it Pets.com?
I think it was Pets.com. I think it was my old friend Bill Gross.
Whatever happened to Pets.com? No, that's mean. I won't say it.
Well, as Bill has done a whole study of the key factor in success, and he found that it is timing.
Yeah.
And he was too early.
There are, in fact, Pets.com type startups now. Pets.com's biggest problem was it was very expensive to send kitty litter through the mail.
Yes. But that's how we get our kitty litter now from Chewy.
You know what? Chewy. Exactly.
I mean, it's the exact same idea. There's no difference between Chewy and Pets.com.
Yeah, it was all timing. So you want to see the very first .com Super Bowl ad? This was 20 years ago. They paid $1.2 million for the ad.
Okay, Dino, I gotta go to a lot of stores to get what you like. I'll be back.
Featuring the infamous Pets.com sock puppet. You know, it's not a bad ad, but it was during the tech bubble burst. Soon after this ad, they launched their IPO. By November of that year, out of business. So that 1.2 million might have given them another week or two runway. That's all.
Leo, I can tell you a story about Pets.com. I actually wrote this up. I looked at their web traffic, and I mapped it to their advertising spend, and they were completely divergent. In other words, like the more they spent on advertising, the less web traffic they got.
Of course.
Well, there was the opposite story for the bubble because you bought audience. So this is the opposite.
I mean,
we've had a number of sponsors. I'll mention names. Squarespace bought a lot of. They were the podcast company for a while. They bought everybody. We were one of the first that they bought. Spent a lot of money on us, and then at some point they bought a Super Bowl ad, and they hired the dude to do their ads. And obviously they spent so much. They could have bought a 2-year campaign for what they spent on one Super Bowl ad. I just feel like it's a status thing. Is that right, Owen? You think it's more of a status symbol?
I think TV advertising for an internet company in 2021 is brilliant because you break through the noise. You know, your Instagram and Facebook feeds are just clotted with ads, and people talk about it. There's a buzz factor. I think advertising in 2000 was stupid because there just weren't enough people online. Like you have all these people watching the ad who maybe have an AOL dial-up account. They're not going to buy kitty litter online. So, I think actually there's an argument that it
makes more sense.
Yeah, especially if you have a broad product that like everyone can use. And, like Squarespace is one of those products. Everyone, probably wants a website.
I know exactly who should. Here's an ad from last year's Super Bowl. This
those of you on audio,
another success story.
I'll be there in a Quibi. A what? A Quibi. Less than 10 minutes.
The guy driving the getaway vehicle for the bank heist has decided to watch Quibi. He was the only one.
He was the only one.
Quick bites, big stories.
Bank heist was an allegory for the investors.
Yes, we borrowed $1.8 billion to create this turkey. Quibi launched in April after the Super Bowl ad and closed 6 months later.
I mean, they blamed the pandemic, right? They said, "Oh, well, it's supposed to be mobile."
Nobody's robbing banks in the pandemic. It's obvious, right?
But I think the real problem with Quibi is like it wasn't social at all. Like you couldn't even take a screenshot and share it. They did something to block that. It was textbook everything wrong about a video product.
Old media.
All right, Owen and Mike and Jeff. I was listening to Clubhouse the other day, and I was trying to cast it to anything besides my smartphone speakers, and apparently you can't. In fact, the whole point of Clubhouse is it's live. You can't record it. You can't listen on speakers. You have to listen on the phone. Isn't that just about the same?
I think
it's
so.
similar, except for you can you can put a microphone up to your phone. And
you could always do
record it.
that. Yeah. Well, you could do that with Quibi. You could hold up a camcorder.
But look at Instagram. Instagram is super successful, and on Instagram you can't download photos. You can't.
That's true.
You can't even share to your own followers.
If you put a web address in the comments or you can't click it.
Exactly.
It's antisocial.
So I think the question is like, what's the context and what's the environment? With Clubhouse and Instagram, safety, like that feeling of like, this is a good place for me to share things because it's not going to be ripped out of context. That I think is really important.
And then you have TikTok, which facilitates sharing everywhere, which is going to be the more successful in the long run.
It's interesting.
Quibi.
Quibi, yes.
Quibi,
exactly.
Quibi, it's going to be huge.
But Owen's point about Quibi is exactly right. If you see something you like, you want to share it.
That's
different from a conversational site.
You can't.
One is a content site. One is a conversational site.
What about Clubhouse? Are any of you Clubhouse members? I am.
I'm on Android.
I've been getting into Clubhouse big time this week.
Yeah.
And so
it's invite only. It's audio only. It's great. It's great if you are somebody who wants to cultivate audience. It's actually not a great site for content, in my opinion. So compared to podcasting, for example, which it has been compared to, it's more like a conference call that you listen to, which is like it's exactly
sounds
like
worse.
That.
But the amount of fluff on Clubhouse is astonishing. I've gone into so many rooms on Clubhouse, and nobody says anything. It's a very kind and gentle place. Everybody's very respectful and all that, which is they've tried to deliberately cultivate that. But in terms of bang for your buck, you can spend 3 hours.
Are they talking the sourdough starters?
Haven't yet seen that.
Yeah, it's nothing good like that.
There's one right now. Yeah, I know. Here's Master Bitcoin Today. There's Sunday Satoshi service. There's a lot of Bitcoin. Here's one on cyber warfare, which would probably be interesting. Kim.com is in that, which is kind of interesting. He's the founder of Mega. Visual artists and creatives talk and more. I've listened to a few. You know what's interesting? If you look at the global calendar, there's a lot of Chinese. This is not yet banned in China. And not yet.
It could be banned by the end of this show.
Yeah. Here's some Russian, but I noticed maybe not today. Maybe they're all watching the Super Bowl. But during the week, there was a lot of Chinese stuff. I listened to a number of really interesting shows from people in Taiwan, mainland China, and Hong Kong talking about China in a way that I had not heard in mainstream media. So that's that safety thing you were talking about, Owen. They feel like they probably can do it because it can't be repeated or recorded.
one of the founders of Clubhouse was actually a reporter whose beat used to be Hong Kong.
Oh, that explains it.
So they absolutely know that they're going to be banned any second. If they're still available in China a week from now, I would be really surprised.
I would love to know, like, if they're using some service that China doesn't want to block. Like, maybe they're using, I'm just making this up, maybe they're using Twilio on the back end and would break too many things if they were to block it.
I'm trying to remember, because I did hear what the Clubhouse back end was, and it was kind of a surprise. Maybe that is what's going on. Maybe, because why wouldn't they have blocked it immediately? I don't remember. It'll come to me before the show is over.
Or maybe they're waiting and watching and making a list of of everyone in a Clubhouse.
They might just see it as being a useful, a useful place to spy.
What's the advantage of? I guess audio conversation. I'm a writer, so I guess I'm used to typing to talk.
Yeah.
I guess most people aren't and are intimidated by that. So just simply being able to talk to have a conversation, but isn't it like, is it analogous to talk radio? It's just only a few people talk and the rest of you listen?
It's kind of like that. So basically how these things work is that 1, 2, or 3 people will start a room and they're on the stage. Nobody else can talk until they choose somebody. And then as they're talking, people can press a button that says that they're raising their hand. And then the moderators can choose or not choose people who raise their hands. And oftentimes, because it's still kind of it's a very chummy kind of Silicon Valley vibe, at least the rooms that I've been in. Oftentimes they personally know the people who are in the audience, and they'll choose those people over people they don't know, for example. But it's kind of like it's tailor-made for the pandemic, because people are at home by themselves. They don't have the water cooler. And so it's kind of great to be just listening and participating in this conversation in the pandemic. Now, whether this succeeds when the dust clears and we are no longer sheltering in place, who knows? But right now it's not like talk radio. It's much more informal and it's much more interactive. But it's still.
How often do you hear women on it?
A lot of women.
Yeah, there's a lot. So this is another interesting thing about it. There are a lot of women on Clubhouse. There are tons and tons and tons of Black Americans, and also a lot of Africans as well.
Baratunde uses it regularly.
Yeah, so it's kind of turned out to be a great place for groups of people who are not who don't have a big presence on sites like Twitter, and so including Chinese citizens, for example, but there's a lot of foreign language rooms, which is really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And so
there's a lot of Dogecoin rooms right now.
Yeah.
Oh boy!
I logged on this morning and randomly Trump's former campaign manager Brad Parscale was in a room.
See, I would be fascinated. Now you might ask, why are you talking about this random Silicon Valley startup? Well, for one thing, it's a unicorn. But for another thing, this past week, Elon Musk showed up, and then Mark Zuckerberg showed up, both on the stage of a talk show that is apparently a regular Clubhouse. When Zuckerberg showed up, or was it Musk? It was when Musk showed up, I think they had 5,000 people in the room. They spun off a second room of 5,000, and then a third room of 5,000 people. So, it had been promoted ahead of time. The other thing that's interesting is it's a Andreessen Horowitz venture, and a lot of Andreessen Horowitz companies end up there. Funded companies end up there. And so it's another one of Andreessen Horowitz has also started their own publishing empire, and I think this is part of what they're doing.
As Benedict Evans, who used to work there, said, it's a media company that makes its money as a VC.
Yeah, we should mention it's Mark Andreessen, who of course created Netscape, and it's a venture fund. Are they late stage, early stage angel? I think they're a big VC, right? They're a normal big VC.
I mean, they do almost everything, but they're primarily early stage.
Early stage.
They like to spot startups and kind of, anoint them. And I think that's definitely happening with Clubhouse. Is the fact that we're talking about Clubhouse interrelated to the fact
they've been anointed? And Zuckerberg and Elon they're all in that club.
Right. Mark Andreessen is on the board of Facebook. Remember?
Right. Interesting. I think that's the one kind of shady thing that you should be aware of is that it is actually part of a venture capital firm's clout that they can get you on Clubhouse and they can get you in their podcasts.
It has to be said that it's invite only. So somebody who's a user and who has built up some points by using can invite you. Otherwise, you can't get in. And it's only iPhone. So if you have an Android phone,
that's
there's
weird.
no Android app.
That's what I've had an invite and I can't get on.
Yeah, they're apparently going to do it on Android soon. I'm sure there's a lot of pressure on
I'm sure they will.
Yeah.
It's actually a classic startup trick. I'm sure they could have done Android.
Create demand. Yeah.
But yeah, they're going to open the floodgates and suddenly they're going to say, oh, we doubled our user base. Well, of course, because you added an entire new mobile OS. Instagram did it right before Facebook bought them, and it definitely turbocharged their growth statistics. I mean, I don't think that was lost on Facebook, but it makes for nice headlines when you have that boost.
Meanwhile, here's another Super Bowl ad from the year 2000. You'll get used to this, Owen. I jump around a lot. This is a company I've never heard of. It's called Epidemic. We're in a men's room. The attendant's looking at the guy. He says he's giving the guy $1.
Now you can make money for something you're already doing with Epidemic.com. Just include a link when you send your email. If your friend buys, you get paid. Epidemic.com.
That's how I got rich.
It pays.
The company got shut down 6 months later.
Yeah.
Yeah, can we put an end to viral marketing in 2021?
You mean the word viral?
Yeah, I mean, I think only Pfizer should be doing viral marketing.
I think at this point, Computer.com spent half of its venture capital on Super Bowl ads in the year 2000 for ads like this.
Last year, 2 men bravely launched Computer.com.
Computer.com sells and explains computer stuff. Take your pills!
Computer.com is a great resource for scanners, printers, modems, blah, blah, blah.
Computer.com taught Daddy how to download pictures.
Oh, no, Billy! I said, guys, will people know Computer.com has to do with computers? Think about it.
Computer.com. Computer stuff. Computer stuff explained. I'm sorry. I almost said.
How much did that even cost?
More than $1 million.
$0.
After raising $7 million in VC, they partnered with an ad agency to create 3 Super Bowl ads 6 weeks before the game started. Mike Ford and Mike Zappy Zappelin.
Oh, it almost hurts.
I mean, startups nowadays, they raise money and they blow it all on Amazon web servers. They blow it on Facebook and Instagram ads, to build up marketing lists. But it's not a splashy one and done like a Super Bowl ad.
There's a lot of status in having a Super Bowl ad. You know that when you go to work the next day, people say, hey, I saw the Super Bowl ad, that kind of thing. By the way, I just checked and Clubhouse is running on AWS. So I don't know if China can't block AWS. I'm sure they could if they wanted to. I'm sure we'll find out in the next few days. Let's take a little break. It's great to see you, Mike Elgin from Elgin.com and Elgin's List, and of course, gastronomad.net. Always a pleasure. I see you have your son's little talking head behind you. We'll talk.
Yeah, on this side.
Yeah, that's a ukulele. On that side, we'll talk about that in just a bit as well. Jeff Jarvis is here. It's always great to have you, normally on Twig. But, I can never get enough Jarvis in my life, that's for sure. And brand new. And
nor Emilio.
Owen Thomas, business editor at the Chronicle, but with a long heritage, long enough to remember many of the companies we've just showed you.
Sadly.
I'd never heard about Epidemic.com. That is not a good name for a viral marketing company.
Not these days, no.
No, I don't think then it was a good name. Oh, gosh. Our show today brought to you by my favorite VPN company, ExpressVPN. Nowadays, everybody, and Jeff, don't say anything, But people are a little nervous about who's watching you when you're online. You might be saying, oh, I'm going to use incognito mode. That doesn't hide you from anybody, especially from Google. When you're using incognito mode, if you're doing a Google search, they know it's you. No one likes to be watched. Big tech knows where you're going. They know where you've been. And you know what? It's none of their business. But when you use a VPN, you're hiding your IP address. And ExpressVPN, really there's no question you need a VPN. The only question is which one, and that's why I'm here to tell you about ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN is, simply put, the best, the most secure VPN. They do zero logging, and I can prove it. Not only have they been audited many times by PricewaterhouseCoopers, their privacy policy exactly spot on. PwC even vetted their trusted server technology. ExpressVPN and invented this to make sure that there was no way they could log and you would know it. When you spin up your VPN server, ExpressVPN loads the trusted server in RAM, and it's sandboxed, so it can't write to hard drive. When you leave, it's gone, it closes, it leaves RAM. There is zero trace, literally zero trace of your visit. ExpressVPN never logs traffic data, DNS queries, search queries. It is private. Absolutely. It really works. And it does all this without slowing your connection. Look, you don't want a free or cheap VPN. You want a VPN that invests in their servers and their bandwidth and their technology. That's ExpressVPN. #1 rated by CNET and Wired. And speed is important because you don't want to feel like, oh, I'm using this VPN and I'm suffering. In fact, you could put ExpressVPN not only on your phone or your computer, you could put it on your router. It supports a great number of routers, and your entire home network will be protected, and the speed is so fast you'll never even know. 160 locations, 94 countries, very fast enough to watch HD video. So that's another great use for ExpressVPN. You want to get some English TV, just go to England. Come out into the world in London, and then fire up your Netflix, and all of a sudden you can watch Netflix UK. Same thing in Japan. It's really an amazing solution. So stop handing your personal data over to your internet service provider or to any big tech company. Protect yourself with a VPN I use to keep me safe online. All you have to do is go to expressvpn.com/twit. They spell it out, EXPRESS, another reason I like them. And VPN is spelled VPN in case you want to know. expressvpn.com/twit. You'll get 3 extra months when you buy a 1-year package. It is my VPN. It is the one I trust. It's the one I recommend. expressvpn.com/twit. We thank him so much for supporting Twit. You're supporting Twit too when you use that special address. So do me a favor and use that, expressvpn.com/twit. Okay, we could talk about Apple, we could talk about Google, but I think we should talk about, since we mentioned AWS, Amazon. Jeff Bezos, kind of a surprise. In fact, it happened during Twig this week. Announced he's stepping down as CEO of Amazon. He said in a letter that he will be spending more time with his money. No, he'll be spending more time with his philanthropies and with his space firm Blue Origin and the Washington Post. I don't think related to that, but Marty Barron, the editor, is he editor-in-chief, executive editor?
Editor-in-chief. Well, executive editor, I think is the title, but yeah, he's the boss.
Also stepping down at the end of the month. Do you think Jeff Bezos is going to take over?
He doesn't want to work.
He's the richest man in the world, or at least the second richest, depending on where Elon is this week. Amazon went out on a bang. He went out on a bang with their best quarter ever, which I'm sure Jeff had something to do with. So the question I think a lot of people are, by the way, they also went out with a $62 million fine for stiffing delivery drivers on their tips. Some people say that's really what's going on, as Jeff sees the attacks on big tech, and like others like Larry Page and Sergey Brin, he's decided now's the time to take his money and get out.
Well, I think you guys had it exactly right on Twig. It seems sudden, but it's actually been very gradual. He hasn't actually been running Amazon completely for a long time. And so the distance between where he was at as CEO and where he's going to be at as the executive chairman is not that far of a distance.
That's one thing I've heard some people say is, oh, he's still running it. from executive chairman, so he has some, some distance from the point of view of regulators. Do you think he's still going to be puppet master, or do you think he hasn't been in a long time, Mike?
He'll be puppet master on the big decisions, but I think his successor knows exactly how he thinks and is very going to be very successful, because it's the same kind of ruthless strategy that they've had for everything. But really, Amazon is a whole bunch of different businesses, each of which is extremely complex. And so he really hasn't been running the day-to-day of any of these businesses, but he has been involved, of course, in the biggest decisions. And he'll probably continue to be involved in those big decisions. Obviously, his weight on the board is going to be gigantic. So, I think this makes a ton of sense for Jeff Bezos. He's conquered the world. And now he wants to, I think he wants to do the ego stuff. I mean, he's getting his butt kicked in the space race with Elon Musk. He doesn't like that. He's going to want to spend a lot more time and money on Blue Origins.
Yeah, Blue Origin. Yeah,
Blue Origin, and he's going to want to do a bunch of other things like that as well. So I think it makes perfect sense, and I think that for very careful Amazon watchers, this is really not that big of a surprise.
Hot take from Felix Salmon at Axios: the role of executive chairman is designed to give the holder power without accountability. Don't expect Bezos to step back from Amazon when it comes to anything strategically important. You obviously, this is your beat, Owen. What do you think?
Well, he owns a big chunk of Amazon. Of course, he's going to care about. He's their biggest stockholder,
right?
Yeah, I mean, he's not going to step back completely on things like, big acquisitions. But I think in terms of like the day-to-day, and in terms of being the person who Congress calls to the carpet, he can say, "I'm not the CEO."
No, get Andy. Andy will talk.
Yeah. I think also Andy Jassy is a very competent executive, and I do wonder if there was an opportunity maybe to be CEO somewhere else, and this was part of the deal to keep him there. No specifics, but it is a pattern. It would explain some of the timing.
Yeah.
And why
to keep Jassy there.
Yeah, to keep Jassy.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. AWS is a huge success. Andy Jassy, the new CEO, was running AWS. You could say it's a reward for doing such a good job with perhaps Amazon's biggest division, or that's an interesting theory. Maybe it was a way of keeping Jassy from going somewhere else.
What's the relationship? Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to ask, what's the relationship between Jassy and Werner Vogels, the CTO? How much was Vogels involved in the start of AWS?
Oh, I gotta get Brad Stone's book back out.
Oh yeah, I don't recall any clashes or friction there, but Jassy was the one who kind of really made it a business. I mean, I've been writing about Amazon Web Services when it was the system they used to put affiliate links on your website. Wow. I mean, they called that Amazon Web Services.
Wow.
This is a thing that started like really small and grew and grew.
I remember those associate links. As an author, you'd make more money on the Amazon associate link than you would on your royalties.
Oh, I loved them.
Yeah, absolutely. That really was the grounding of Amazon Web Services.
I didn't know that.
Like, let's take little pieces of Amazon and expose them to the outside world so that others can build things.
Is Jassy a technologist or more of a
No, he's an
person?
MBA, but he's been running AWS since its inception in 2003. I mean, he's the one and only CEO of AWS.
He was part of a crew of MBAs who were brought on to Amazon, really their first big batch of non-technical hires. And, those are folks like Jason Kyler, who's now running Warner Media. There's a lot of really talented people who kind of got in that early crew. And, I think they brought a lot of discipline to Amazon. One of the criticisms of Amazon back in the Amazon.bomb days is like there wasn't a focus on the profitability of individual items. There just wasn't a lot of discipline. It was a lot of grow big, grow fast. Which is probably the right move in those, land grab days of the early internet. But he's one of the people who brought rigor, I think, to Amazon.
He's also and maybe this is from Brad's book, but it's also from a Wall Street Journal article. He was along with Jeff Bezos, the guy who thought up AWS. I mean, he's not some guy they brought in to run AWS. He joined Amazon in '97. when it was still just selling books. He was Bezos's technical, this is again according to the Wall Street Journal, technical assistant in the early 2000s. He was in that famous meeting in Jeff's living room where the idea for AWS was cooked up. So he can take some ownership in that.
Yeah, I think he's got, enough technical credibility. I mean, Bezos is not a technologist.
No, he's a hedge fund.
Yeah. So, in terms of having that technical credibility, that kind of product cred with Amazon's workforce, which is really important for recruiting and morale, I think he's got it.
I would guess, I don't know, maybe somebody knows better than me, but that what they're looking for at Amazon is not necessarily technical ability. You can hire engineers. It's that strategic thinking that Bezos is so famous for. I mean, the very concept of Amazon is somewhat brilliant. Apparently, when he was a hedge fund manager, he was trying to think of, well, what's a business that the internet is going to completely explode? And I read this in an interview, or maybe it was in Brad Stone's The Everything Store. He said, it was a speech he gave. Ben Thompson refers to it on Stratechery, actually. It was a speech he gave in 1997 or 98. He said, the biggest bookstore in the world, physical brick-and-mortar bookstore in the world, can only have a few 100,000 volumes. There are 2.5 million books in the world. This is one business that can only be done right on the internet. And it was that insight, that strategic insight. This is Bezos in a speech at Lake Forest College in 1998, was rebroadcast by C-SPAN.
Web usage was growing at 2,300% a year.
Look,
I have to
this is before he was muscle bound.
Look how young he is. Oh my God.
I know he's put on 40 pounds of muscles.
Yeah, and and lost a little bit of hair.
Good at understanding exponential growth. It's just not something we see in our everyday life. But things don't grow this fast outside of petri dishes. It just doesn't happen.
We're back on the viral marketing.
When I saw this, I said, okay, what's a business plan that might make sense in the context of that growth? I made a list of 20 different products that you might be able to sell online. I was looking for the first best product. And I chose books for lots of different reasons, but one primary reason, and that is that there are more items in the book space than there are items in any other category by far. There are over 3 million different books worldwide in all languages. The number 2 product category in that regard is music. And there are about 300,000 active music CDs. And
that's changed, by the way. Apple has 8 billion songs in its collection. So that's changed a little bit.
Human beings aren't good at understanding exponential growth. It's just not something we see in our everyday life. But things don't grow this fast outside of petri.
He's repeating himself. That's viral.
But I also think it's very different in books as well, in part because of Amazon's create space, which is, Amazon's policies and products have actually expanded the number of authors and the number of books by probably an order of magnitude since speech.
Good point. Just as Apple breaking the album up into singles has expanded the number of songs.
I just put a paper up in the Amazon section of the Rundown that I just saw on Twitter that said that when publishers prevent books from going up on Google Books, it hurts hard book sales immensely. If they're up on Google Books, they have 35% higher sales for less than popular titles.
I just bought a book and it made me mad. I bought a book that was published in the early 2000s called After the Ice. It's a anthropologist, archaeologist look at the evolution of humanity from the year 20,000 to 5,000. And I didn't want to buy this 700-page paperback. I wanted to buy it on Audible would be my first choice. My second choice would be Kindle. It's not on either of them. I forced myself to buy a paper book. I absolutely agree with this. This is clear that digitizing is good for books, right?
Yes, especially when it goes to that long tail you talked about.
Yeah.
The other thing Bezos came up with, and it's not a completely new concept, but I think he really maximized it, is the flywheel. And that's the idea that you have a business that feeds another business.
Yeah.
And Amazon Web Services is part of that, Amazon Prime. All of these things don't exist in a vacuum.
This is famous Bezos napkin diagram as illustrated by Ben Thompson in his Stratechery column. The flywheel is each input you have anywhere on the flywheel causes the business to grow faster and faster and faster, right?
Exactly. And, with Prime, it's that you've got this user base and you can add things. You can add video, you can add audio, you can add music. And it makes the subscription more valuable. It makes people more likely to get it and to not cancel it. And that in turn funds all these new businesses. So I think Amazon's such a mighty flywheel now that Bezos probably feels like he can step back and work on other things.
It's not just other businesses as well. The heft of Amazon and the number of products that they move through have to be delivered has given Amazon the power to force all delivery systems to deliver overnight. And so I think that's the biggest reason why people buy things on Amazon. They know that Amazon has their credit card and their address already on file. It's like a one-click thing, and they know they're going to get it tomorrow. That's killer. And who else can do that? I mean, when I think about buying something that's not on Amazon, I thought, well, this could take 2 weeks.
Yeah, Mike, we've done research with newspapers that have commerce offerings or media that have, and they've found without a doubt that a Prime logo available for 2-day is a huge driver of sales. And if you don't have it, it's a huge depressant.
Really? Oh, how interesting.
Yeah, because so what the funny thing is for media, if you want audience, you're stuck with Google. If you want to advertise or Facebook, if you want advertising, you're stuck with Google. If you want to do commerce, you're stuck with Amazon. That's why they get resentful, because they never built this stuff on their own, and they're stuck with the big guys.
It might be an interesting opportunity for Amazon right now as Google steps back from Stadia a little bit. They closed down their independent game design studio, which has two effects. One means there won't be any original games for Stadia from Google, which is probably minor, even though they did hire Jade Raymond from EA, the creator of Assassin's Creed. I mean, they hired a really talented group of people, and they're all back on the street. But it also, the second impact is it shakes people because they've seen Google cancel things before. And it probably, given there's a lot of competition for Stadia, gives people second thoughts about subscribing to Stadia, especially when Amazon is one of the companies competing against Stadia. And they asked Andy Jassy how important gaming is to Amazon, and he doubled down. He said,
really?
Yeah. He said, we are committed to making video games. This after a Bloomberg profile of Amazon's game platform. Responding to a Bloomberg report about turmoil in the gaming division, Andy Jassy told the staff he sees a bright future ahead. And I imagine Google's stumble with Stadia probably informs some of that as well.
I mean, it's ironic that in fact the biggest mistake Google made with Stadia was getting into content in the first place. I mean, when has Google ever been a good content?
It'd be like starting YouTube and
that
saying,
Apple,
we're going to have a studio and create all of our own video.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, but I think that, what's very clear we've learned over the last 10 to 15 years is Amazon is so good at entering new markets. They almost always hit it out of the park. And when they do enter one, they really know what they're doing. Unlike Google, which, throws something against a wall, sees if it sticks, it usually doesn't stick, and then they close it. Amazon, if they get into game development, they're going to be in it for the long term. They're not going to just
so strategic.
But Mike, games is the exception to that rule. I have been writing about Amazon's game studio. I mean, back in 2012, I was writing stories about what a mess it was, how they were trying to recruit people from Zynga of all
no.
and couldn't get them.
Couldn't get them, which tells you something.
I mean, this Bloomberg article reflects a state of affairs that's been going on for almost a decade. And Andy Jassy, clearly feels some loyalty to this guy that he put in charge, Mike Frazzini, of Amazon Game Studio. But they have not had a strategy. They have not had a hit. I think I think Jassie's ascension would be a great time for them to say, to reshuffle the ranks and move this Mike Frazzini guy out.
Yeah.
I think it is time.
Yeah. The headline from Jason Schreier and Priya Anand at Bloomberg: Amazon can make just about anything except a good video game. Video game's hard. It's a very weird business. It's not anything like movie studios or anything else Amazon might have tried their hand at. Although, let's not forget, Amazon does have a very famous failure in another tricky category, the Fire Phone.
Yeah.
But this is what Bezos said, and actually says it's on every shareholder letter. Ben Thompson called it out. We will make bold rather than timid investment decisions where we see a sufficient probability of gaining market leadership advantages. Some of these investments will pay off, others will not. And we will have learned another valuable lesson in either case.
The Fire Phone gave
You go.
The Fire Phone gave Amazon Alexa. That technology came out of the Fire Phone.
There you go.
So which completely transcends
There you go. Although one
devices.
might say at this point, what is the future for Amazon's Echo? Long term, I mean, voice assistants have not exactly become taken off, have they? Or have they?
Well, I think Amazon's going to probably want to get into the augmented reality business when that business becomes
we're going to get to that.
Very mainstream.
Yeah, because there's some interesting rumors from The Information and Bloomberg about Apple in all of that. Let me take a little break. Boy, you guys are smart. I'm having fun with this one. Thank you so much for joining us, Owen. I hope you will make this a regular stop now, because it's great to have you. Not just when there's a Super Bowl on, okay? Owen,
you have a deal.
Do you not like football? Is that it?
I've never been into sports ball. I just
Perfect.
I guess I took that part of my brain out and made more room for chat.
It's the Un-American show.
Owen, Tom, in past years we've actually had Europeans on Super Bowl Sunday for that very reason. But even now you can't even get Europeans anymore. So we had to get Owen Thomas, business editor at the San Francisco Chronicle, but a longtime chronicler of what's going on in tech. It's great to have you here. Jeff Jarvis, I don't need to introduce him, from BuzzMachine.com, our regular host on This Week in Google. And Mike Elgin, longtime friend of Twit, former news director, now traveling the world from his home in San Jose. I'm sorry. It's good. You're going to get out there. Maybe we'll meet in Barbados. I'll convince Amira. We got to go to Barbados.
Let's do it.
Wouldn't that be fun? Oh,
that would be.
The beach. Let me talk about ZipRecruiter, our sponsor, a fantastic place to go to hire your employees. If you are in a position now to be hiring, first of all, God bless you. We need more companies like you in America right now. But I think the time is rapidly coming where we're going to start to get back to work, get back to business. And I want you to think about, when it's time to hire, I want you to think about ZipRecruiter. Companies are starting to figure out how we can survive in this epidemic, from working remotely to pivoting their business models to moving to Barbados. Performing art companies are streaming, right? We've seen Broadway. We've seen opera streaming, symphony concerts. Clothing companies are making N95 masks and hospital gowns. Our liquor distillery down the street is making hand sanitizer, Griffo. I like their hand sanitizer because it smells like whiskey. It's good. Brands are spending more on e-commerce advertising because I think online sales are going to be coming back big time. Just look at Amazon's results. So hiring is coming back. And if you are in charge of hiring, you're probably thinking about this with a little trepidation because it's hard work. Hiring means you're going to be pelted with phone calls, emails to your inbox, unless you use ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter makes hiring faster and easier. I want you to go to ZipRecruiter.com/twit. You can try it free. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. That's because they use technology to match prospective employees with your job. It also makes it really easy. All of the applications come into the ZipRecruiter interface. The resumes are reformatted so you can scan them easily. You can use screening questions, true, false, multiple choice, even essay to eliminate people who don't fit. They'll help you narrow down the right candidates fast. It makes it the easiest way to hire. We know that because we have used ZipRecruiter for years to hire. I remember when we lost our bookkeeper, and poor Lisa, who will do it if we don't have somebody doing it, was depressed. She said, I'm going to have to do the bookkeeping in addition to everything else. I said, ZipRecruiter just posted. It was breakfast. By lunchtime, before lunchtime, she started getting, this candidate's really good. This one's really good. This was literally 3 or 4 really qualified candidates within an hour or two. Now, I can't promise you that, but 80% of employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a great candidate within the first day. Find out for yourself right now. Try ZipRecruiter free. ZipRecruiter.com/twit. Thank you, ZipRecruiter, for helping us, helping Lisa. ZipRecruiter.com/twit. And thank you for helping us by using that special address. ZipRecruiter.com/TWIT for twit. Let ZipRecruiter take the tough job of hiring qualified candidates off your plate. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. You brought up something, and I thought, this would be a great subject for our next. Augmented reality. So Bloomberg and The Information both publishing the most details yet we've seen about glasses coming from Apple. And this was a Information exclusive. New mixed reality headset details, swappable headbands, eye tracking. Mark Gurman also had a lot of details. At this point, I think it has to be kind of at least somewhat true. They're saying $3,000. At least that's the price Apple is discussing. They're also saying
it makes Google Glass look like a good deal.
I know. You can get 2 pairs of glass.
Don't tempt me. I don't want to make that mistake again.
So it's interesting. These are mixed reality, at least according, again, this is all rumors. And I should also point out these prototypes probably do exist in the Apple labs. We've heard enough about it, but that doesn't mean Apple will ever come to market with it. Apple prototypes a lot of things. They're always looking for the next big thing. They need to find another iPhone. But I think this makes kind of sense. Tim Cook has said many, many times in analyst calls and speeches, augmented reality. He really thinks it's the next big thing. The rumor is this device has 12 cameras. It has a accompanying thimble that you put on your finger. The cameras recognize motion. You can use your fingers. They also show you the outside world. So that's why this is not a virtual reality. You're not sealed in. But you see the world around you as well as superimposed information. Dual 8K screens, the best I've seen from anybody, including Oculus, is 4K. So this is a lot higher resolution. That's a good thing, by the way, because you're only a few inches away from those screens. You want to make them look good. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I talked to Alex Heath, who got the scoop for The Information about 45 minutes after this went live. And so the thing to keep in mind is that there are variations in the in the prototype you saw. So, for example, the most cameras were 14.
Wow.
Most of the prototypes had at least a dozen. So the 8K screens is not 100% certain that that's what it's going to be.
There's good reasons for that. That's expensive, and it drains battery really fast, and that's going to be an issue too. In fact, the early prototypes we heard, I don't know if Alex talked about this, the early prototypes we heard made your neck strain because they were so heavy that it would push your head down. That's not good.
Yeah.
What else did Alex tell you?
Well, the other thing that we were sort of going back and forth about was the fact that because they saw a very high-res render, and they were allowed by the source to do a cartoonish low-res version.
Oh, yes.
But the render they saw did not have a top strap. Now, typically, VR glasses that are heavy have a strap across the top of your head to help support the weight, whereas this does not, which suggests maybe it's pretty light. Another thing that's really interesting about this is that you talk about all those cameras. Some of them are for looking at the outside world for augmented reality and mixed reality. Some of them are pointed at your eye gaze. So the 8K display, you're not getting 16K coming at your face. what you're getting is high res where you're looking and low res where you're not looking.
Well, that makes sense. That's kind of how your eyes work. There's only a very narrow cone of acuity, and almost everything else is very fuzzy.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is called foveated rendering in the trade.
That's how the fovea works. That's right.
Yeah, and so I the other thing that's very interesting, and you hit upon it, whereas these are set up for virtual reality, and Apple has been very negative about virtual reality in the past, and very, very, very positive about augmented reality. So I think there's a pretty good chance that they're not going to be super into virtual reality, that these glasses are going to be used for augmented reality, constantly showing you what's in the real world. Again, with mixed reality, it's going to combine virtual and augmented reality, and also 360 video, which these will be great for. But I think what we can look forward to is a transition from sort of the precursor to augmented reality, which currently exists in the iPad and the iPhone. There's all kinds of development going on with AR, all kinds of apps available for AR. This is going to transition to these high-end glasses. In fact, there's some speculation this may be a kind of developer's version to get the developers going.
Google Glass. By the way, I'm sitting with two people who bought Google Glass.
Yes.
Actually, I should include myself. I bought it but never wore it, which is even stupider. I bought it and gave it to Jason Howell. Owen, did you buy Google Glass? Because if you did, then it's complete.
I resisted, though. I wrote some really dumb things about Google Glass,
like positive articles, like this is going to be great.
Actually, you guys will howl, but I wrote that Path was going to be the killer app for Google Glass.
What was?
Path, the mobile social network
Path.
from Dave Moore.
Oh man,
yeah,
I loved Path,
and I made a decent argument for it, but I was completely wrong.
At least
on
you
both
didn't say
accounts.
it was Google Plus.
By the way, Path is still around. I think they got bought by a Chinese or Japanese company.
They're thoroughly dead.
They're dead.
They're dead. I feel like people keep asking Dave Morin to bring it back.
It was great. That's another timing one. If Path were around today, I think it'd be a killer. So is Dave considering it?
It doesn't seem like there's anything really happening, but there might be an opening. I mean, people are, to the extent that it launched into this kind of feeling of Facebook fatigue, like all of that is. Yeah, 10X.
Morin was at Facebook, and Path originally was only 50 friends, and then it expanded to 150. But it was like a very limited Facebook and more private Facebook, right?
And one of the things it had going for it is that Facebook's mobile app was pretty bad at the time.
Right.
And Path was all mobile.
God, I loved
Path.
But,
I don't think someone will have that window again.
No.
I think it bears to since we brought up Google Glass, you have to point out the major difference besides the quality and all that stuff. Google Glass was a heads-up display. So
right.
So you move your head, the little screen that's floating in front of you moves as well with your head. It's not anchored in any reality, other than possibly proximity. So it could bring up content if you're like in a room or whatever. Whereas the Apple glasses, we didn't mention, I don't think, it has LiDAR. So it can map 3D spaces in front of you.
Just like the iPhone 12.
Exactly.
Just like the new iPad Pro.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the way I would express that is that those devices have it because their glasses are going to have it. So this is part of the sort of getting the world ready for all this stuff.
This is also how Apple works, which is they slowly introduce features into other products to perfect them, and then they can go to the next level. In fact, it's widely considered that the Apple Silicon, which they originally put in the iPhone, then the iPad, then in the Macintosh, is also critical to this.
Can I tell you what I think?
Component.
Can I tell you what I think is going to be the killer app for this platform? Apple has something called Bionic Virtual Meeting Room technology, which they patented. And so picture you're going to have a meeting and you don't want to do another Zoom call. So you put on these goggles, and the other people in the meeting are represented by Memoji avatars that are 3D, holographic, and in the room that you're in. So they're sitting around in your space physically.
I don't want to be represented by my emoji. I just really don't like. By the way, sure, Owen, I want to pitch you, Owen, on a news story that the killer app for Apple's AR glasses will be Snapchat. You think you'd want to write that story?
You just put on some Snap spectacles.
I did, because I don't have the glass.
And you, what I love is that you had those within arm's reach.
Oh yeah, you never know when you're going to need these. In fact, Jason, if you could bring your Google Glass back, because next time I want to put those on.
My Google Glass is up there, right next to me. I won't get up again. It's right there.
I hate to be the spoiler here, but I think this is going to be another big flop for Apple. I do not think augmented virtual mixed reality. I don't think the market size is nearly as big as Facebook or any of these folks think.
I agree with you. I thought VR was a complete bust.
Yes, VR, but augmented reality, I think. So let me take the absolute most opposite.
But look at HoloLens, which is not good. Look at Magic Leap, which I tried to develop a thing, not good. There's a long way to go in this stuff. Go ahead, Mike.
Oh, yeah, absolutely a long way. I mean, 10 years before, but I think within 10, 12 years, I think augmented reality is going to replace
You're both right.
smartphones.
You're both right, because Apple's going to ship these in a year or two. Owen will be right then, and then maybe in the long run, there'll be a
the other part of this news.
What if there's a long way to go and it goes nowhere?
Right.
Well, the other part of this news is that Apple is targeting 2025. By the way, these glasses are targeted for next year. But the light version, where you're actually looking through physical glass instead of looking at a 8K monitor for each eye, is 2025. That's their target.
I'm more interested in that. You don't think so? Yeah.
Oh, no, that's going to be the killer. That's the killer platform. The technology isn't there yet, but
yeah, if those glasses you're wearing right now, Mike, could have augmented reality, some sort of heads-up display on them.
Well, it'll be much more than that. It'll be like the augmented reality where 3D objects are anchored in space,
right?
Like HoloLens or whatever,
right?
And it'll be very, very high tech. But we're talking 3, 4, 5 years where even the first versions of these hit. But when they do hit, this is the thing that's going to replace smartphones as the main computing device that people use.
Clearly, what Apple thinks.
Yes. The good news for Apple is that they're making another big bet on hardware that I think is going to be much smarter in the long run, and that's AirPods. And I think AirPods are actually going to be the thing that augments reality far more than any of this video, vision dependent hardware. Because imagine, right now you can have Siri read your text messages to you while you're listening to something and do something else. And I think if you think about building on that experience where it's not interruptive, then I just think there's a lot more room for growth there in audio.
But in the augmented reality space, you're going to get 100% of what you get through earbuds, because you're going to have the audio. You're going to have haptics, so there's actually going to be an element of haptic. There's haptics in this prototype, by the way, and you're going to get the visuals as well. So in terms of turn-by-turn directions, yes, you can have it talk to you, but you are going to want to see those arrows floating in space telling you where to go. For children's applications, they're going to want their Disney characters dancing all over the house. For, whenever you're moving around in the world, you just want information popping up and all this kind of stuff. I think that I think you're right that augmented reality is going to be super, super powerful, especially as the AI gets better. But I do think that the way to look at Apple's augmented reality and virtual reality, mixed reality project is that it will combine the best of the iPhone, the Apple Watch, and the AirPods and all the things that you can do with those devices into a single interface with the addition of holographic video. So it's really all those things coming together, I think.
I think you're right, Owen, that the audio is going to be a big part of this, and spatial audio. Clearly, that's what they're going for. But couldn't it also be a technology like LiDAR that they're developing for down the road, a killer product that would include all of the above?
I think that they're going to have to create a lot of contextual technologies so that they know where you are and what you're doing at a given time, and then they prompt you to display something. And they're going to take that strip away the video part that is useless, requires a lot of hardware, put that into the audio product and make that super smart, super helpful, the right information at the right time in your ear, and and abandon the video hardware.
Well, there's one other thing that might confirm this, which is that Apple clearly cares about health. The Apple Watch turns out to be a health device as much as anything else. And an in-ear piece of hardware has all sorts of access to health information that even a watch doesn't have access to. So it would fit in with that as well.
I mean, can you imagine wearing one of these things and like bouncing around on a treadmill? No, but you are going to have some kind of audio.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, so I think the glasses we're getting to in 5 years will be almost as light as anybody's plastic prescription glasses.
Right.
They'll be great on a treadmill. But I think the larger point is that we're really talking about timing, because all user interfaces in the entire history of user interfaces have always gone toward having the computers and the technology work harder so that the human to match up with human nature and human expectations. Human beings are visual. The idea of having 100% of the sort of augmented content coming in to be interpreted through language is awesome. I would love it. But I think that it's even more awesome for human nature to have a visual representation of things as they're running around. And I really think that there are going to be sports versions, sunglass versions, lots and lots of versions. And I also think that it's going to be so powerful that people with perfect vision will start wearing glasses just so they can get it. Right?
There'll be a style thing. And somebody in the chat room said, how long before Apple buys Luxottica, which, of course, monopolizes the entire glasses frame business all worldwide, and it would make perfect sense for Apple to buy Luxottica.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Can I ask about a different Apple story that confuses the hell out of me?
Yeah.
Kia? Apple and
yeah, Kia? I can explain Kia. So look, if you're Apple computer, you have a massive hit in the iPhone that's been driving revenue for more than a decade. It's just outpaces everything you've ever done before. There has to be intense pressure from stakeholders and customers, frankly, to do the next big thing, right, Owen? I think that's a lot of what these rumors we're seeing is about, is that Apple is striving mightily, spending a lot of its big multi-billion, $100 billion cash hoard on trying to find the next big thing.
I think I can answer the Kia question with one word: Foxconn. Apple is not a manufacturer.
They don't want to make it, and you know what? I wouldn't buy a car Apple manufactured. It would
true, but as a brand, I mean, Renault,
no, it's not the brand. So
Fiat?
Here's the reason Kia, and I think this is what Owen's about to say. And by the way, this is a rumor that comes out of a Korean site. This is, as sketch a rumor as you can get, although it kind of follows on Hyundai, which is Kia's parent company, announcing foolishly that they were talking to Apple shortly. I'm sure anybody who saw this, I certainly did, thought that was strategically stupid. And they immediately retracted it within hours. Oh, no, I'm sure Apple's talking to a lot of people. I'm sure they got a call from Cupertino saying, hey, if you want to do business with us, here's lesson number 1. Shut the hell up. Nevertheless, Kia, Hyundai have a kind of mature electric platform that's fairly well known. They've been doing electric cars for a while. You need a manufacturing partner, like you said, Owen.
True. Owen, you're right about that.
Yeah, and if according to the rumor, Apple wants to make 100,000 vehicles per year when they release this in 3 years. You're going to need somebody like Kia who knows how to do that. It took Tesla quite a while to ramp up to that size. Go ahead, Owen. I'm sorry.
Oh, also Ford, Toyota, General Motors, they've got too much ego, right?
They're busy.
Yeah. No, I mean, even if they had spare manufacturing capacity, they would not want to cede, the ground to Apple. Think about when Apple got into the iPhone. They partnered
Verizon with said no way.
Yeah, they partnered with Singular. It wasn't even AT&T then. Right. It was like the also ran of wireless companies.
This is why it's so good to have your historical perspective here. Yeah.
Yes. It's, Singular was willing to do what Apple wanted. And, I think whoever ends up making an Apple car, if there really is going to be an Apple car, is going to be someone who is willing to, cede ground to Apple.
Kia also has a factory in Georgia, the United States, not Tbilisi. So that's a big selling point these days for Apple. So they could make these cars in the U.S. It would probably be, I'm sure it'd be electric. The question is, would they also be self-driving, or how self-driving they would be?
I mean, they'll be as self-driving as every other car, which, the whole industry is going towards self-driving gradually.
Right.
So they'll be right along there with there. But I think that Apple, if people are still confused about why Apple will get in the car industry, I think Apple understands that in the future, a car will be primarily a content consumption experience.
Yes.
The transportation part of it is kind of a commodity. So who cares?
Yeah.
Your body is going to be shuffled around. It's no big deal. Cars resemble each other so much these days in terms of their internals and their functionality. All that stuff is commodity. What isn't commodity is the experience, the user experience, the customer experience, the content consumption experience, why your body is being moved around. And so I think that people have a hard time getting their head around that reality. But once you accept that once you're in a self-driving car or mostly self-driving car, your mind is on other things besides watching the road, right? So you're going to be doing VR experiences. You're going to be listening to music, watching concerts, chatting with people in HD video and all that kind of stuff. Apple is not going to cede, 30% of people's content consumption life by not being in the cars. They're going to make sure they're in the cars.
Google or Amazon or any of them. Yeah,
exactly. And so I think that's the key insight that that tells us why they're getting in the car business, and also why it's conceivable that they would partner with a company like Kia, which is a subsidiary, I think, of Hyundai. It doesn't matter. As long as you have batteries that work and you have the factory capacity and all that kind of stuff, it doesn't matter who the car maker is. That's not the important part of a car in the future.
Apple being Apple, it'll probably be stick shift, just to be difficult.
No, there'll be no buttons.
Right, exactly.
Mike, this is incredibly depressing and dystopian, because basically what you're saying is we're going to be getting in cars that drive themselves, and we're going to be tuning into these, AR, VR experiences. Basically, the car is going to become like a little mini VR studio. And that's the only way we're going to interact with people is, basically we're pretending that we're taking rides with each other.
Well, I think we're going to be immersed in augmented reality and entertainment and infotainment and HD sort of video interaction with people and surfing the internet, all that kind of stuff all the time. And it's just like the future has always been. It's going to be way better and way worse at the same time.
Would it be safe to say that what Apple's core... See, you always try to understand what a company's core business is. It's said that the railways would have done better if they'd understand that they weren't in the railway business, they were in the transportation business. Is it safe to say Apple's core business is experiences, is delivering experiences?
Leo, I'm going to correct you there. The smartest railways figured out that they're in the real estate business.
Yeah, that's right.
Because when you connect two nodes with a transportation network, suddenly the real estate on either end becomes more valuable.
It always comes down to that. Radio stations are in the real estate business. Movie theaters are in the real estate business. Podcasters, if they're smart, are in the real estate business. Which is
the McDonald's brothers learned
McDonald's is a real estate business. Yes.
So here's the
what is Apple making more valuable?
Apple is in the content business. So half of their, well, not half, most of their business is in the content consumption experience business. And the minority of their business is in the content creation business. That's the way I think is a good way to understand Apple.
Or experiences is another way to put it.
It's about, they're in the content business.
Their hardware facilitates, brings you the content, those experiences. And it makes perfect sense if they're going to develop a car, it's a content vehicle.
It's a phone with wheels.
Yeah. Why Hyundai? Hyundai unveiled, in fact, this is Roberto Baldwin writing. We got to get Roberto back on the show. He now works at Car and Driver. Hyundai unveiled in December their EV platform. They plan to have 23 global electric vehicles by 2025. The platform, which is called eGMP, and it's Hyundai and Kia, can deliver as much as 600 horsepower, which means they can do high performance as well as, get around cars. They're targeting 310 miles of range. This is a competitive, they call this in the business sled, that you can build a car on that goes right up against what GM's doing. In fact, one of the things you're going to see on the Super Bowl, if we ever get to watch it today, is GM basically making the announcement that they are turning into an electric vehicle company. They announced this at CES. You'll also see Audi responding to the Will Ferrell commercial. I can't wait to see both of those. So this, it's pretty clear that the big three automakers. I'm next week going to take a delivery of a electric Mustang. Finally, the big three automakers are clearly seeing the future as electric. Apple is, and it makes perfect sense that Apple would go with somebody who has a platform, manufacturing ability, a factory in the U.S. Even if this rumor is wrong, and it's kind of coming from a less than reliable source, it makes so much sense that I think it's probably true. Much like,
so you have Google and Ford, you have GM going electric, you have Apple going with Kia.
That was this week. Google and Ford announced a partnership to do Google software on Ford's new vehicles, not the Mustang, but coming in the next couple of years. That's a very good point.
And I wonder really about the Germans too, because they're not going to sit back.
No. Who would they deal with?
Themselves.
Let's take a break on that note. I love it. Jeff Jarvis. It's not a democracy, Jarvis. That's okay.
No, it's Leo. It's not a democracy. I want it to be a democracy.
This today.
Story.
You picked the next story, and you were right. It was exactly the right one. So you're in. It's great to have you, Jeff. Buzzmachine.com, and of course from Twig. My friend Mike Elgin. I'm glad you haven't been traveling. We get more of you, which is great. Thanks for joining us today, and Owen Thomas, who's the new guy in town. But you fit right in, business editor of the San Francisco Chronicle. Really nice to see you, Owen. Are you do any podcasts? You ought to.
Once in a while, I go on Fifth and Mission, which is
that's your T-shirt.
The Chronicle's signature podcast, and we were doing actually a weekly startup show for a while, but we've folded our tech and other tech and other coverage into our main podcast.
Good. Well, I hope you will consider making this your podcast in future. It's great to have all three of you. Our show today brought to you by Barracuda. Boy, this is the time for Barracuda. Barracuda is perhaps one of the best known enterprise security companies in the world. They do a great job. They also do a lot. In fact, if you go to their website, barracuda.com/twit, read the blog. They do a lot of research. And one of the things they've noticed is that the number one way to target companies these days is email. Email. Hackers are always looking for the weakest link in your security, and it's almost always your email security. What does that mean? Well, they can inject malware into your network. They can spearfish you. They can do account takeover, conversation hijacking. In fact, Barracuda has identified 13 types of email threats. And honestly, every one of these is a risk for you. You want to know, are you effectively protected against all 13 threat types? And that's where Barracuda's new Threat Analyzer tool comes in. This is something free you can do right now. You got to know if you're not fully protected in all 13 of these vectors, cyber crooks are going to figure it out and they're going to hit you. That's literally what they spend their time on. That's their full-time job. And when they find that gap in your security, they just choose the right threat type. They customize it. Boom. You are potentially losing millions of dollars. Your reputation in the market, it's a dangerous place out there. And here's where it gets hard. With hundreds of highly targeted, personalized threat variants emerging every single day, with many different kinds of on-prem and cloud-based email systems, it can be really challenging to figure out where you are vulnerable. Okay, this is the pitch. Go to barracuda.com/twit. It's a very simple We were just showing it on the screen if you're watching the video. Multiple choice quiz about your email security setup. They call it the Barracuda Threat Analyzer. In 2 minutes, roughly, you can generate a custom report telling you which threat types you are most vulnerable to. And of course, look, Barracuda sells protection. They're going to give you great recommendations in every area and what you can do to protect yourself against your particular vulnerabilities. This is free. It's easy to use. No pressure. Barracuda's December spear phishing report found that 12% of all spear phishing attacks are business email compromise. That's up from 7% the year before. These attacks are growing. Why? Because they work. According to the FBI's most recent internet crime report, business email compromise led to over $3.5 billion in losses last year. The government of Puerto Rico lost $2.6 million in one attack. If you watch Shark Tank, you know Barbara Corcoran. Her employees were paid a fake invoice, a $400,000 invoice that came in through the mail. They call it email impersonation. It looked like a vendor. They paid it. Fortunately, they found out. They recovered the money. Not so lucky, an independent school district in Texas made fraudulent payments over a whole month of more than $2.3 million. I shouldn't laugh. That's horrible. That's horrific. Does your email security protect against that and all the other attacks? Barracuda Threat Analyzer. Try it today. It's free. Takes a couple of minutes. You'll get a full report showing exactly what you need to do to secure your email. Barracuda's Threat Analyzer. Just take a couple of minutes at barracuda.com/twit. Find out where those threats lie in your particular situation. Barracuda.com/twit. Thank you, Barracuda, for not only protecting us, but for your support of the show. And, of course, thank you for supporting the show by going to that address, barracuda.com/twit. Let's see. Boy, we've covered a lot of territory here. Have I run out of stories? Never. Never. We covered a lot of stories, though, with little sides like yours, Jeff. Google and Ford tying up for 6 years. That deal all interrelated could yield $9 billion in revenue for Ford. And Ford says millions of its vehicles will run on the new Google Android for Car starting in 2023. Not for money.
Leo, I believe that's $9 billion annually.
Annually.
I believe that's what Morgan Stanley.
So that's a back of the envelope calculation, but
it's good work if you can get it.
Jeez Louise. So I guess the question then is to ask is, will that mean that you won't be able to drive a Ford vehicle in Australia come next year?
It'll just stop.
Google's threatening to leave Australia. In fact, Microsoft jumped on that threat. Google's manager for Australia testified, as you probably know if you watch our shows, the Australian legislature is considering charging Google for the news snippets in its search results. Google says, you do that, we're leaving. Microsoft actually had a meeting on Monday with the Prime Minister of Australia, Scott Morrison, saying, Bing is really good. I asked on Wednesday, remember this, Jeff? I said, well, who would Australians blame? Would they blame Google or would they blame their legislature if all of a sudden Google's search disappeared? And I got a few emails from Australians who said, you know what, we would blame Google.
I don't buy it.
I'm so confused about. Can somebody explain? Are they talking about a great firewall of Australia blocking Google search? How hard is it to get another country?
No, it's the opposite. Google would pull out of the market rather than comply.
Right. As they did with China. As they did with China. Yeah.
Right. But it's like, but the reason you can't do Google searches in China is because of the Great Firewall of China, right? I mean, it's a global internet. Like, how do you stop Australians?
Google used to provide search in China, and it was censored, and they decided they no longer wanted to.
Mike's technical point is correct. For a while, instead of getting Google CN, you'd get Google HK, Google.HK.
Right.
And in order for Google to say, no, you can't use Google in Australia, they would have to block Australians from using Google.com or Google.HK or Google.
No, I think they'd say, fine, you want to be more traffic at Google.com? That's up to you. Try to block us.
Oh, that makes sense. So you just shut down Google.au. And
yeah,
and on Google.com, you can still show snippets, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's kind of moot because there's no freaking way Google's going to do this.
Oh,
look, you're wearing your glasses. Aren't you handsome?
I found this message from Google in my Google Glass. Yeah. Now we can take them off.
Okay, Mike, now you got to put yours on.
I see. That's long. Oh, how's your battery, Jeff?
Uncharged for about 5 years, Mike.
You know, it's funny. Every once in a while, on the anniversary of the iPod, I'll plug my original iPod in. It does requires finding a FireWire cable, but I'll plug it in. We have one somewhere because I know we did it last year. And all the songs I listened to in the year 2001 come up. No podcasts, I'm sorry to say.
I got into a tiff with. Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
Oh, the bizarre thing about this is Google, as far as I can tell, makes no direct money from Google News. When you're
right,
it's just part of the overall value of Google search.
Yes.
And when you go onto Google News itself, there are no ads. So getting from the point of Google shows snippets of news to Google makes money is really quite a leap. And I'm not quite sure how the Australian legislature is kind of justifying that.
Well, it doesn't matter because Rupert Murdoch told them to do it. They did it, literally.
Well, they haven't done it yet. They haven't done it yet.
Well, the legislation's going through. Now,
you think it'll pass?
Part of the answer to your question, Owen, is that in the original legislation, the platforms were forced to negotiate with the publishers. And if they couldn't reach agreement, they'd go to my Uncle Vinny, the arbitrator, and they'd meet over the Barbie, and the arbitrator would just dictate something, right? And Google said from the beginning, this is ridiculous. In any normal market, the publishers would be paying us because we send tremendous value to the publishers. But all you're allowing to happen here is that we have to pay the publishers. So the Powell said, oh, okay, you can negotiate that too. It's okay.
That's the debate, though. That's the debate, though. Which way does the value flow? Do the publishers get more from the Google search results?
Yes.
Or their contention is, well, if you put the snippets on there, nobody's going to go to our website because they're going to be satisfied with a snippet. They're going to see the search results.
What's also offensive about this, and we all know this from our industry, is that if newspapers had to pay for the sources of their content, they'd go bankrupt. Right. I taught, if Owen called me, no one wouldn't call me because he knows better. But if he called me to do a story and I said, Owen, my rate is, he'd hang up the phone.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And so I did a post. We talked about this on Twig. I'm doing a book on the Gutenberg age. And as part of the research, I came across this fascinating thing I didn't realize is that newspapers from the beginning in the U.S. Employed people they called scissors editors. And newspapers under the Postal Act of 1792 were allowed to exchange newspapers with each other for free. And the policy decision here was to spread news. It was a good thing. And the newspaper editors were all happy with it. They took and they gave, and it was okay. The only thing that pissed them off was if they didn't get credit. But that was it. Otherwise, they shared back and forth. And this is the basis of the entire industry. Every newspaper reporter reads other newspapers and says, oh, it's a story idea. I think I'll take that. And the hot news doctrine doesn't exist, so you can do that under copyright. And they copy each other all the time. BuzzFeed had the story of the two-colored dress. How did suddenly 5,000 media outlets around the world have the same effing story? Because they rewrote BuzzFeed.
Well, so here's another little snippet. Like a lot of people aren't talking about this movie, but Tom Hanks' new vehicle, News of the World.
News of the World, loved it.
A wonderful, wonderful movie, and I won't give anything away materially, but his job. He's a sort of a freelance newsreader. So he goes from town to town buying newspapers and then he reads them.
Post-Civil War Texas, we should explain.
Yes.
1867 or 68.
Exactly. But here's somebody who's getting a dime, 10 cents per person to read journalists. He's basically a blogger.
He brings newspapers with him.
Yeah.
And puts on his little spectacles, leans over and says, well, here's a story, and reads the newspaper.
Yes.
Now, I love the movie, but was that a real job, or is that something completely fictional?
Well, I think it's got to be a real job. I mean, like I know that Mark Twain made a fortune after he was a print journalist, telling stories of things that he saw. Now he wasn't repurposing.
He was
content.
more of a humorist, kind of on stage, early stand-up comedy, really.
I mean, part of Tom Hanks's character's expertise was making it entertaining.
Right,
so,
that's true. Yeah,
I don't know, but this is just another example.
I watched that movie and I said, if that's what I would have done if I'd been born then, because they didn't have podcasts.
I had the same thought exactly.
They didn't have blogs.
In coffee houses, people in England earlier
17th
years,
century, yeah,
people would read the papers to each other, because some were illiterate and some it was just part of the way it worked. And then before that, news ballads were distributed by singers coming into town singing the news ballad about the witch having burned
like the town crier,
and then you'd buy the song so you could sing it with your buddies in the bar or at home.
Here's why I thought it must be fictionalized, because 10 cents, that's way too much money.
That's a lot of money.
If a movie cost a nickel in 1920, I don't think people were paying 10 cents 60 years earlier to hear Tom Hanks read the news.
Penny max.
Penny, yeah, maybe a penny.
Jeff, can I throw a wrench in here? How does the shift to subscription news change the equation? I mean, does that rebalance things with publishers at Google at all?
But I don't think so, because it's all about conversion, right? I'm sure you hear that all the time. The reason the New York Times can get as many 7 million digital subscribers to news and food and crosswords is because it has 60 million on the web. And a frequent user of the New York Times, they had to change that when they started the paywall. It used to be that they'd get you 10 pages a month to say, hey, you should pay up, and nobody hit it. 10 a month. So the frequency of use is very low, so that if you can get any sampling whatsoever, you're better off. And so they're going to give up sampling here. I mean, the other thing, Owen, that interests me in this story is so Google's threatening to pull out Google out of Australia. Facebook is threatening to say, we're going to disallow both publishers and users from putting news on Facebook. What fascinates me about that is, I bet Facebook is half wishing this happens. And then they kind of say, good, pets and parties, that's it. This controversy stuff, gone. We're the happy place again. They didn't want
97% of the news feed, right?
Right, exactly. News is less than 4%, and that includes us skewing the averages, us crazy people.
Well, all I know is every time I try to read Owen's writing, the Chronicle says, you've read your 3 free articles already, buddy. Get out of here. You know what? That actually does work for a lot of
Owen's
sources.
about to invoice you for the show, but we'll talk about that later.
What's the sweet spot? That 10's too many? Is 3 the right number?
It's about 5. It's about 5. Okay. There's a lot of data on this now. And if when Google started Subscribe with Google, which they did in partnership with newspapers, Google got smart about this. AMP and Subscribe were started working with product people at newspapers. The FT, I saw a presentation early on, and the FT working with Google data. So Google had data about who was coming
FT does
through the
zero
FT.
free ads. Free.
Oh, no. The FT, to you, they don't. What the FT does is that they meter it based on what they know about you from their own data and Google's data.
We're talking about the Financial Times. I can never read an article on the Financial Times. They're always
right. Because you're trying to go to it often. They're saying, this guy's going to pay us. That's it. Whereas,
oh, really? So some people get free stuff.
If somebody hasn't come in for 4 months, and they come in for an article, they'll give them the article because your content's your best ad in that case.
It's too much, too smart. They're too smart.
But that was Google helped them do that.
Well, I have to say, and this is, again, an important data point for Australian legislators, that's exactly how I know what my paywall limits are on all of these things, because I use Google News, and I get sent to these local articles. I haven't bought the Chronicle yet, Owen, but I will now. But I did buy the Santa Rosa newspaper and the Petaluma newspaper, and I got to them through Google News. So I think Google is definitely generating traffic and revenue.
Here's the thing about it, Owen. So let's say that the law passes and Google actually leaves. Murdoch's in better shape than ever, because Murdoch has the brands. He has half the media in Australia.
Doesn't hurt him.
Doesn't hurt him in the least. In fact, you try to start a new brand
Good luck.
in Australia, you're doomed.
Good
you're
luck.
doomed. I had a tiff with the head of the Australian Guardian the last couple of days on Twitter, because the Guardian, and I love the Guardian, and I've worked with the Guardian, I've written for the Guardian. I am ashamed of the Guardian that they are in league with the devil Murdoch on this. And the guys, well, I don't understand. And Sir Tim Berners-Lee testified about the damage this will do to the entire internet, especially the web he invented.
Okay.
And this Guardian biz guy said, well, fine, he knows things about the web. He doesn't know anything about competitive policy. Jesus. He just flicked away the guy who really understands the web because he invented it. And in nihilistic, cynical business is tying in with Murdoch on this legislation. And Murdoch also, let's not forget, I know I rail about Murdoch on Twig, but hey, that's all I do, so I only have so many spiels, so I'll do it here too. But the ruin of Western democracy in the English-speaking world, is also wants to destroy the internet. And that sounds kind of emotional, but it's true. He is shot against it at every single opportunity because he sees it as competition. To Owen's point, he believes in a firm, concrete paywall. He doesn't want any of this internet junk, and that's his business model. And the Times of London has 160,000 subscribers. The New York Times has 7 million. The difference is Murdoch's religion.
We're seeing a lot of that. That's one of the complaints against the new California Privacy Act, was that Facebook has enough money to adhere to this law. So they loved the law because it would
regulatory capture.
It's regulatory capture. It would only hurt the little guys, not the big guys. I want to take a little bit of a break, and then I seem to have saved the high blood pressure stories for last. But if you really want to get upset, let's talk about Amy Klobuchar and. Okay, enough. And her new attack on Section 230. It's the Democrats' turn. She's also got a new antitrust bill she's proposing. Neither one of these has yet been got out of committee, but I think it'll be very interesting to see what happens. Meanwhile, I'm going to say, yo soy un hombre sincero. I am an honest man. Is that right? I'm learning from Babbel. I'm learning Spanish. I did French with Babbel. I love Babbel as a great way to learn. It's the #1 best-selling language learning app because it's fun.
Bienvenido, Pablo.
Bienvenida,
Ana.
Oh, man. I'm going to ruin my lesson. I probably should stop right now.
Encantada.
It is the easiest way to learn with just
Encantada.
Isn't that a great one?
Encantada.
For you, I say encantado. For her, I say encantada. I'm learning Spanish.
I'm so excited about this sponsor. This is
Do you use Babbel?
I have, and I've got you. Well, I stopped trying to learn Spanish when the election went nutty in 2016. I need to go back, so I'm going to use Babbel now. Yeah, and you already know German, but it'd be a great way to polish. One of the things Babbel does, BABBEL.com, and of course I'm doing it on the phone. I like to do a lesson when I get up, and then I do a review when I go to bed. So that way I'm kind of, in just 15 minutes a day, I'm slowly learning a language. But then as you get better and better, that gets harder and harder. They even have, and this is so cool, they just introduced this, live conversation groups that it's kind of like Clubhouse in the language that you're learning. So you can, because that's the hardest thing, is you learn the vocabulary, you learn the grammar, but then you got to do it with people talking at real speed. Native speakers, language lessons designed by humans. Unlike the language classes you might have taken in high school, Babbel designs their courses with real-world conversations in mind. It's very practical, things you'll use in everyday life, like encantada or encantado or hello, how are you? And of course, building up to tourist languages, like how can I book a room, or I'd like 2 more beers, please. And then eventually, you're really speaking in the language. And as I said, you're going to be able to speak with native speakers in the real environment. Other language learning apps use AI for their lessons plans. At Babbel, lessons are always created by real language experts. They have 100 language experts on their team. Their method has been scientifically proven to be effective. I consider it so. It's a great way to learn. 14 languages right now: Spanish, French, Italian, German, and others. Actually, with Spanish, you can either learn Spanish,
or Latin American Spanish, which I'm learning the Latin American because I think it's going to be more useful. And then they have a speech recognition technology built in. They use a very nice platform that helps you improve your pronunciation and accent, and it's really good. Babbel's amazing. Right now, in fact, Mike, you probably should use this as you travel around. When you purchase a 3-month Babbel subscription, you'll get an additional 3 months for free. 6 months, you could be pretty fluent in the language for the price of 3. Just go to Babbel.com. Use the promo code TWIT, BABBEL.com, promo code TWIT. 3 extra months free. Babbel is language for life. And I think everybody should learn a couple of extra languages.
You absolutely have to use something like Babbel because everywhere you go in this world, everybody not only speaks English, they want to practice their English on you.
Yeah.
So nobody wants to speak their own language.
Yeah.
So if you're an American, you really need Babbel because traveling around the world is not a whole lot of help.
Well, and you know, I speak French pretty well. I thank you, Babbel. And my experience has been, yeah, they'll speak English. You can speak English anywhere. But when you speak the language of the country you're in, it changes your experience. You get a much more genuine experience. It's a much better way to do it. And frankly, nowadays, I mean, knowing Spanish in California is a must. It really is very useful. I use it all the time. And all I can say is encantado. So
the difference between Spanish and French, though, Leo, is that in any Spanish-speaking country, a little bit is appreciated and welcome.
Right.
Whereas you'll never speak French well enough for the French.
You know what? It's funny because I have a friend. She was learning French because she was going to France. We met up with her in Paris. I never had the heart to tell her French was awful. She should have used Babbel. Her pronunciation was not even close. And she went into a store with Lisa, and the lady wouldn't even talk to her. She tried and tried, and the lady was like offended that whatever it is you're speaking, it ain't my language. So Lisa has learned a few phrases like, "Do you speak English? I'm sorry, I don't speak French," and it worked out fine. But I like speaking French, especially, you know, when I'm in France, I like to be able to speak French.
It's just courtesy, too.
It's courtesy.
The first time we went to Stockholm, which oddly we went because I was so impressed with IKEA when it came to the United States. I said, I got to see what this.
You didn't say
what produced this.
Where are the meatballs and lingonberry jam?
So we arrived the first night. We went to a restaurant. I get to the front. I say, "Svo." As if there's any confusion, I put 2 fingers up to make sure it was 2 people for dinner, and there were 2 of us there. Man speaks to me in Swedish. I wait, and I use my Berlitz at the time because there was no Babbel.
Right.
And I said, "I'm sorry, I don't speak Swedish. Do you speak English?" And he looks at me like, "Why the F did you start this? Of course I speak English. I'm Swedish."
In Scandinavia, their English is better than Americans. I mean, they speak beautifully. So
better grammar. Yeah.
It's nice to. I studied Chinese in college. And when I was in China, just even a few words for me made such a difference in the reception I got and just the warmth. People are warm, you know, if you give them a chance. And in speaking a little of the language is wonderful, I think. So
Leo, 你会讲中文吗?
Oh, you 说中文? Did you study it?
一点点，在芝加哥大学.
Yeah, 在大学 also, yeah. Yeah, EDR. I have a little Beijing accent because I had Beijing teachers. So I say EDR, and they go, "What are you? Think you from Beijing? What are you?"
I had a Taiwanese instructor who made fun of the
well, that's cool. Did you study? You studied in college? That's cool.
Yeah, taking us back to Clubhouse, I actually tuned into this Mandarin Learning Club.
Fun.
Channels, and it's really, you know, it kind of just wakes up the brain cells.
Yeah, when I hear it, I get all excited. To me, it's a beautiful language. I really loved it, and I've lost it completely because that was 40 years ago. You know,
I feel the same way about Japanese. I studied it for 3 years in college, and whenever I hear it, I just get all excited.
Yeah, I have a real affinity for China. It was my major, and I really. Of course, when I went in the 70s, you couldn't really go to China. But I've been since. Have you traveled to China much, Owen?
I took a big trip with my family in 2017. And
it's fascinating.
It really blew my mind.
Yeah. I have a deep affection for it. And it kind of, all the xenophobia and the anti-Chinese sentiment hurts me. I understand the Chinese government is not a great regime. I understand that, but there's a big difference between the government and the people. And the people are amazing.
And their cities are incredible.
Oh, my God.
The public transportation actually works, and
Well, that's why I'm kind of slow. I'm hesitant to condemn the Chinese government. I know they're repressive, and I know how they've put the Uyghurs in concentration camps. But imagine taking a country of 1 billion people and taking it from essentially feudalism 100 years ago to something more modern than the U.S. It's pretty impressive.
I know we're wandering way off of tech, but
that's what we do.
Welcome to the show, Owen.
That's what I'm
But I almost look at what the Chinese government is. I do look at what the Chinese government is doing there, and just thinking, why are you wasting time?
Yes.
Why are you wasting lives? Why are you wasting your international reputation? Doing these cruel and unnecessary things.
You might wonder that about our government. What is this anti-Muslim sentiment? I don't understand it. All right, Section 230, which we have all agreed is.
I just like the sound effect.
I know.
Every time you say that, is that Jeff or is that just a machine that you press?
I wish it were a machine. I don't really need the button though. I could push Jeff's buttons with just a few words.
Yeah, that's all it takes.
And it hurts me because it's the bill. Here's Mike Masnick's tech dirt take is a dumpster fire of cluelessness.
It's great analysis.
File.
He always does them, but this is beyond even a Masnick standard.
Mark Warner has introduced a new Section 230 reform bill. Just briefly, I think everybody who listens knows because we talk about it a lot. Section 230 is the Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act of 1996, which essentially, what is it? The 23 words that created the internet.
26.
It's a beautiful in its minimalism, but it essentially says that if you are Twitter or Facebook or Leo Laporte, you are a platform, not a publisher. You cannot be held liable for the speech on your chat room, on your blog comments on Facebook or Twitter, and moderating them does not make you a publisher. You do not have the onus of being a publisher just because you moderate the content. The fact that you could, in fact, quite quickly, anybody sues you for, if somebody sues me for something somebody says in my chat room, and people have threatened, and I go to court, all I have to say is, Your Honor, Section 230 protects me, and it's summarily dismissed. It's a real protection against those kinds of frivolous lawsuits. And it makes it possible to have blog comments and Facebook and Twitter and a chat room and all of that. So just quickly, and if you want to know more, there's a wonderful page on Section 230 on techdirt.com it says, you've been forwarded here because you're clueless about 230. I think we should all send links to Mark Warner and Amy Klobuchar and Mazie Hirono, the senators who are sponsoring the Safe Tech Act, Safeguarding Against Fraud, Exploitation, Threats, Extremism, and Consumer Harms Act. Masnick says it's one of the worst Section 230 bills I've seen, and we've seen some bad ones.
Really awful ones.
There's a lot of things bad. For instance, it takes that defense that 230 provides against lawsuit from an affirmative defense to a defense, to kind of like fair use. So you would still have to go to court, and you would have to defend yourself. You'd have to pay a lawyer. And then, yes, it's the biggest, most consequential change, according to Masnick, is it takes the famous 26 words of the current law, removes the protections entirely if money changes hands, in other words, advertising, and then it changes it from an immunity to a merely affirmative defense. So I got that backwards. It's not an affirmative defense now. It's an immunity. Right. It would become an affirmative defense. But he says that it basically wipes out all of the benefits of 230.
So
go ahead, Mike.
Let me just take a devil's advocacy, and I've actually been dying to talk to Jeff about this for a long time. But
good. Then Owen and I will sit back.
Here's a question. So
I brought an apple.
So let's start with a basic free speech trope. okay? Yelling fire in a crowded theater. Okay, if you do that, that's not protected speech because you're putting people in danger. If somebody whispers to you that there's a fire in a theater and you say, he said there's a fire to the whole theater, then the amplifier is the person liable. Now let's take this to Facebook. I agree that just allowing somebody to publish something, a social network like Twitter or Facebook should not be held liable. But if they amplify it, in other words, if a source of content that has 100 people subscribing says something, and then Facebook's algorithms redirects it from the 100 people and sends it to 1 million people, should Facebook not be liable for that amplification?
So let me, a few things on this. One is that there is a bill from Tom Malinowski, who happens to be my representative in New Jersey, that tries to do that tries to say, if you amplify is when you're going to get in trouble. Because everybody's trying to slice 230 like it's a bologna. I'll take this slice off, you take that slice off, right? So Fosta Sesta took off the child porn and sex trafficking slice. Somebody wants to take off the amplification slice. Somebody wants to take off this slice. That's what it's going to get sliced down to nothing, honey. But so there are variants of that. But the problems then become a fewfold. One, define what's bad, right? What's the bad speech? What's the problem? We're gonna litigate that like crazy. So two, Mike Masnick himself said, if this law passes, he has to shut down TechDirt because the harassment cost to you to then fight over these legal issues will be such that you will allow no one outside to do anything that might get you in trouble. So I listened for the 87th time to Joe Scarborough. I wake up at 8 o'clock, before 8 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, I turn on the TV and there's Joe Scarborough yelling about Section 230. I want to sue Facebook. I want to sue
Oh, really?
Twitter.
He's against 230.
Finally,
I knew I didn't watch
that
show for a reason.
He voted for it.
Right. So 230 was Ron Wyden's addition to the CDA.
Yes.
Very specifically to protect the internet. I mean, he knew exactly what he was doing.
No, I'd go even farther. It was even smarter than that, Leo. It was brilliant legislation because it was to protect the public conversation.
That's
because if you
a
didn't
better
have
way of
230,
putting it. Yes.
You end up with one of two extremes. Either there's no public conversation because nobody wants to be liable, or there's really, really crappy public conversation. Everything is parlor because you don't want to moderate it because you become more liable. It's all about liability. So I made a video, by the way, to Joe Scarborough on YouTube. A little 5-minute video. I put it up on the rundown, and he called. To his credit, he called.
Yeah.
And he said he's going to order Jeff Kossoff's book, which I recommend to you all, which is the 26 Words That Created the Internet. I said, have on Jeff Kossoff, have on Mike Masnick, have on Daphne Keller and lawyers who really understand this stuff. But please have someone on to explain this to you, because the emotional aspect here is, somebody should sue them. Somebody should sue Facebook out of business. Well, yeah, that may well happen. And with you, when you sue Facebook and Twitter out of business, you also take with it Black Lives Matter and Me Too. And you take with it the voices who were never heard in mass media. So mass media is delighted with this. Murdoch would love this too, by the way, because it gets rid of all of that cacophony that I would call democracy and they call noise. That's the problem, Mike, is that you by emotionally wanting to go after liability here, for what reason? For what end? Just because you want to punish somebody? That's what this is about.
Personally,
and then it takes with it a lot of other things.
Yeah, personally, I think that one of the reasons, so there's been the great canceling, or whatever you want to call it, where all the social networks got rid of all the QAnon people and got rid of Trump and got rid of all this stuff.
Which 230 allows them to do, very importantly. That's why the right doesn't want 230, because 230 protected them in doing so.
My fear is, I think people don't appreciate certain aspects of democracy or free speech. One of the aspects of democracy people don't appreciate is that by having everybody involved, they're inside the tent instead of outside trying to destroy the system. And same thing with free speech. You want everybody to be free to speak as much as possible. But I feel like the amplification, the automated amplification, and the ability to game the algorithms.
Like, what are we doing right now?
Yeah, exactly.
What are we doing? We're amplifying things right now. right?
Yes,
So we're doing that, right? That's what media has always done. That's just what media has done for a long time. It amplifies.
Well, yeah.
Emilio, the editor of the Chronicle, decides what to put in the Chronicle. Owen, the business editor, decides what to put in the business section. They amplify. It's what media has always done.
A human does that, but a human is very difficult to game in the same way. So you have this.
There's an industry called PR built to do that.
Well, you have InfoWars and all these who are devoted to the project of figuring out how to game algorithms while nobody's paying attention and have all these runaway things. Then you have the Facebook recommendation engine. Facebook itself did a study to find out what the number one reason is why people join extremist groups, and the number one reason was Facebook was explicitly recommending those groups to people. And then they got rid of, said, okay, well, don't do anything about it. Mark Zuckerberg himself personally said, no, don't take action on this. Just let this keep happening. Then they got caught and they changed it and all that stuff. But my point is that I would love to see people be able to have the bubble of free speech to be much larger, to have more extreme content, but not have that content amplified and converting people into extremists.
But the other version of that, Mike, is so then you end up with a world of billboards. Then this notion that there's some kind of definition of neutrality out there where they're not allowed to select things on the basis of what they know about me. Then all I have is a huge river of crap. What Facebook does, in fact, do is to try to find the things that I'm more interested in. Now, that gets demonized. Like, they made Jarvis into a radical. He didn't used to scream like this. It was only because of Facebook that he does this, right? And that's the argument that's made. Believe me, I've always done this. So it gets demonized, but in fact, it's a service. It's relevance. Mass media was a one-size-fits-all product. We've lived there. I've had that. I don't think it's any damn good. And the other problem here is that there's this presumption that, oh my God, Facebook's a cesspool, it's awful, horrible things happen. The numbers don't back that up. The numbers, the research doesn't back that up. We're not in filter bubbles. We're not as bad as it seems. Now, what we do want from the platforms is data to researchers to understand what the impact is. We need that, and I'll argue strenuously for that, but we don't know right now. And so there's a lot of emotional presumption that something must be done. 230 is the cause of all of our ills. Before 230, we were a great country. We weren't racist at all. Bullshit.
Well, is the free market, taking care of this? Because sleeping giants and other activists have called Facebook and Google to account for the extremism on their services. And part of the reaction was that large advertisers, at least for a time, boycotted Facebook and YouTube in particular. I don't think that really took a chunk out of their earnings, though. So I'm not sure if that's really going to be, the thing that reins them in.
It didn't. I mean, look. Well, but here's a better example of it right now. Is that Lou Dobbs was on Fox networks for a long time. What forced him off? Somebody suing. Now I look at that and I hate Murdoch and I hate Fox, so I say, oh, goody. But there is a concern there. A look at the Peter Thiel site, suit against Gawker, right? And so we can see.
I'm not familiar with the incident.
Have you ever heard of that, Gawker?
Exactly.
What is? Owen was the editor-in-chief of Valleywag. Was it?
Give me that perspective.
Was it in that time frame? Was the Thiel lawsuit related to your work?
It was years after I left, but it was directly related to some posts I wrote.
Right.
Did you out Peter?
Peter Thiel was publicly known to be gay in a very large circle.
We should point out you're gay as well, so.
Which doesn't give me a special right to to write about one's sexual orientation, but the thing I wrote back then was that people in Silicon Valley are being very weird and touchy when I bring up this topic, and it seems unenlightened to treat gayness as something forbidden that we can't talk about.
Right.
When many people know, that Peter Thiel is gay, many people know that I'm gay. I don't need to broadcast it and say I'm out for it to be okay. I feel like coming out is something we do for.
We don't really need to relitigate that, but I just do want to thank you for putting Gawker out of business.
Owen, I would like to hear though is that because that's I think the point where I was headed here, and I'm glad you're here for a million reasons, all the history you bring, and you bring that, I'm sure, difficult history. But if you don't mind, talk for a minute about the legal chill that you lived through, that your colleagues lived through, and what do you think that even that alone, just that suit, has done to the business?
Absolutely. I mean, to be clear, I left Gawker Media in 2009. The lawsuit was, I believe, 6 years later, and we didn't learn, no one involved learned of Peter Thiel's involvement in funding the lawsuit. It was a lawsuit by Hulk Hogan against Gawker.
It wasn't about Thiel, right?
No, completely different post.
Yeah.
And
he just funded.
Peter Thiel used a strategy called litigation financing just to harm Gawker, not because he was interested in.
And that's shameful. That's really appalling.
Yeah. He had no particular interest in Hulk Hogan except that privacy lawsuit was a vehicle for him.
Right.
And I think it's a very real chill. Gawker filed for bankruptcy because of particular quirks of Florida law and the way that a decision basically had to be immediately paid out before an appeal was heard.
Wow.
And, again, this was part of like a deliberate strategy to place the lawsuit in Florida so that they could go down this path. And, we think of the United States as having fairly media friendly laws, but the fact that, a lawsuit like this can be pursued, even though it was, Gawker believed it could be overturned on appeal, meaning that it, the original decision was not sound. It's scary. And, let's go back to Mike Masnick talking about the legal risk from overturning Section 230. He's basically saying his website could not operate because the legal uncertainty is just too great.
Right.
And I think
too small.
I wouldn't have a chat room. We wouldn't have comments. We wouldn't have a forum for the same reason.
Have a dump button for me when I say anything.
I definitely have to get it. I would just eliminate all other hosts. No, it's more than fanciful. It is a chilling effect, and I'm actually thrilled that you're here, Owen, because that you have direct experience of exactly the kind of thing we're talking about. And it put Gawker out of business. And I'm being facetious, about it. But that wasn't.
You would have to judge the risk.
Yeah.
I mean, if Owen now you work for the Chronicle, they have really good lawyers. They have a lot of experience at doing this. On the one hand, they're richer to go after. On the other hand, they're harder to go after.
Well, it's that regulatory regulatory capture again. Facebook probably could defend itself against this new bill. I couldn't, or wouldn't.
Well, Facebook would have to change. The algorithms would go in and become even stupider, because if you used a word like Nazi, they would fear that you were going to be accusing someone of that, or thief, or pick a bad word that could be said about someone.
So I think
they're going to try to cut it all out.
What is the likelihood of this passing? We've seen a lot of Section 230 attacks over the last 6 months.
It's not this one. It's the combination of the pincer of both the right and left going after them for their own reasons.
Cluelessness. It's the lack of understanding.
It's not a hard law to understand.
Yeah.
Nobody gets it.
Yeah.
Masnick just tears his hair out explaining it 100 times.
I will save
Jeff Gossip.
I will save the antitrust bill for Wednesday. We'll talk about it on Wednesday because we're
oh, thanks. My blood pressure's too high.
I don't want to kill Jeff. A couple of really quick stories before we wrap things up. This I thought fascinating. Governor Sisolak of Nevada, Democrat, has announced a plan to launch innovation zones in Nevada to jumpstart the state's economy by attracting technology firms. Among other things, the zone would permit a company with large areas of land, like, say, Tesla, which has the Gigafactory in Nevada, to form its own government with the same authority as a county, including the ability to impose taxes, form school districts and courts, and provide government services.
16 tons. What do you get?
It's the company store times 1,000. This has not yet been, he said it in his State of the State address January 19th. It has not yet been introduced in the legislature. Wow. But I wonder if that's really where we're headed. He said, instead of tax benefits, we'll just
Google
let you
Island?
tax. Yeah.
Google
That's
Island?
exactly. It's Larry Page's island. Yeah.
Yeah. This is Larry Page, the co-founder of Google, proposed essentially a zone free of regulation so that tech companies could kind of experiment and figure things out. If you remember, Google had a floating barge at one point, and people were wondering, like, is this
Right, I forgot about that.
Yeah,
that's
right. Like, is that so they could, take it out to sea?
But just as
international waters,
just as the UAE has realized oil's not going to last forever. We need to have, they've launched a space program now. We need to have other things. I think Nevada is saying the casino industry may not last forever. We need another way of generating some revenue. We got a lot of desert. What if we just?
I mean, it just. I think self-driving cars is a big real-world illustration of this, where, we've had a competition, kind of a race to the bottom among states to see which state can regulate them the least and thereby attract testing. Well, what did we get for that? We got a woman killed by a robot car in Arizona.
Yeah. That's where they all do the testing. Yep.
I think it's a tremendously, it's a bad enough idea to have a situation where, states within this country, counties within states, like, compete with each other to be, to say who can be the most lax in a regulatory scheme.
Devil's advocacy. How many people were killed by human-driven cars?
Good point. But
the self-driving car thing is all about getting to a point where far fewer people die in cars.
Yeah.
No, true, but Mike, I think Owen's. I'm going to agree with Owen on this one, because I think that the problem was it wasn't a Google car that killed the person, and the person was going across the street, but it was another company that was kind of rushing through this, and they found a place where they could rush better.
Right.
Google's taken a lot of care about this,
and Uber has since left that category.
Exactly.
They're no longer doing self-driving vehicles.
Yeah.
They'll let Google and Apple do it instead. The other story, real quick, because I want to let you guys go. We've been going 2 hours. The other story, 23andMe. This is everybody's worst nightmare, is going public with aid from Richard Branson. They've got your genetic material, and now they're going public, folks, with a SPAC. What's a SPAC, Owen? I had you on specifically to explain this.
A SPAC is a special purpose acquisition corporation. We used to just call them blank check companies. So this is a company that has literally no business. It's just some money.
In this case, it's Richard Branson's VG Acquisition Corp.
Yeah, exactly. Think of it as like a big pot of money, and according to the rules of the NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange, it's actually legal to take a company like this public. You disclose to investors that we have a pot of money. We're going to put it in a trust. We're going to look for something to buy, and then we're going to buy that business. We're already public. We're trading, and we're going to match our ticker symbol together with their business. And suddenly you've got a company. How is that different from an IPO? Well, one thing it does let you do is you can buy essentially earlier stage companies that might not be mature enough, or their financials might not look quite right for a conventional Wall Street IPO process. On the other hand, you are you're still putting retail investors at risk when you buy into these companies.
There's also the privacy concern, because now who owns the spit is going to be the question. And by the way, I have not one but 2 vials of spit in the rack at 23andMe because I bought some more. The ticker symbol, which should be spit, honest. But it's okay. It's me, M-E, and it will be traded on the New York Stock Exchange. So they've gone public without really going public. It's fascinating. I don't understand.
So, Owen, in a case like this, would they have gotten more if they'd gone public in the IPO path?
I think it's a SPAC is in some ways more like an acquisition for the target company. So a lot depends on how much money they've raised, what their investors are expecting, and the really technical details about the capital structure, which I won't get into. But there may be reasons why it's actually better, especially for the venture capital investors, to go through a SPAC.
Wojcicki and Branson both invested $25 million, but is that just pro forma?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of saying, they're putting some money on the table.
Yeah,
right. They're they're doing that to kind of boost confidence in the deal.
What's the governance? Is Branson now on the board of the company, or? That's a good question.
He is. He's one of the managers of the SPAC. So, where he lands in terms of the operating company, I have not seen that.
It just means
I have not seen that discussed.
It just means that Susan Wojcicki gets more invitations to Necker. I mean, Ann Wojcicki. Susan's her sister who runs YouTube. Actually, probably both sisters get more invitations to Necker Island so that they can enjoy the private island in the Caribbean.
The interesting thing to me is that the sponsor of a SPAC, the company that creates it, typically gets a fifth of the company just for setting up the deal.
Just for doing it. That's their commission.
So that's the new bank.
So current shareholders of 23andMe will own 81% of the combined company. So I guess the other 19% goes to Richard Branson.
And that seems like a big take for taking a company public.
Interesting. Well, this is why we have financial reporters on. Next week, we'll talk stonks with Owen Thomas. It's so good to have you, Owen. Come back soon. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great, Owen.
Getting
really,
to spend
really
time
good
with
to
you.
have you here.
Fantastic stuff. Owen Thomas is the business editor at the San Francisco Chronicle. At Owen Thomas on the Twitter. Is it SF Gate? Is that where people should go to read your stuff?
We're actually sfchronicle.com. We set up our own subscription paywall site. SF Gate's completely
Gate's not the same anymore.
Separate.
That's good to know. Because the Gate did not have a business header. So I see that the Chronicle does. Good. SF Chronicle.
Jeff knows that whole complex history with the Examiner, the Chronicle, SF Gate. It's
the weird
that's a whole other
partnership. Yeah. Jeff Jarvis.
It's kind of a SPAC in reverse with a triple sow cow.
I give it a 10. He stuck the landing. Director of the Townite Center for Entrepreneurial Journalism at the Craig Newmark Graduate School of Journalism at the City University of New York. We do that because Craig listens and he wants his name sung. It's part of the deal.
No, I do it only. No, he doesn't. He do it. No, don't accuse him. I do it in tribute.
Yes, it's a tribute. That's all. Thank you, Jeff. We'll see you Wednesday, and we can talk about the antitrust legislation.
No!
And then I like to keep his blood pressure up. Keeps him alive. Mike, so good to see you. Mike Elgin, give us a plug for Kevin's Talking Box.
Well, hellochatterbox.com is where you can go and learn more, but it's basically a build it yourself, program it yourself, smart speaker like the Amazon Echo, but it's the only smart speaker that I'm aware of that is legal in schools for kids because it is so private. Neither Chatterbox nor its partners have any idea who the customer is. And so this is just an easy to build project. It's designed for kids 9 and up, but even if you're an adult, you want to make something that's private and it's powerful. It does way more than an Amazon Echo does because it will literally do anything you teach it to do. It's just a fantastic product. Kevin spends morning till night perfecting this product, and it's really become an amazing thing. So I would recommend everybody go to hellochatterbox.com. And thank you for letting me do that plug, Leo.
I always love that because I think it's a great project. I love Kevin, love you, and I think this is something every kid should have access to because
thank you.
They need to understand this technology. It's in their lives for sure, but they need to do it with privacy first.
Yes.
Mike Elgin, elgin.com is his website, gastronomad.net. Last chance to sign up to go to Oaxaca for the Day of the Dead. Man, that sounds so cool.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Mike, for being here. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, Leo.
We do This Week in Google. No, it's not the name of the show.
No.
Jeff, you're confusing me.
We're taking over. We're taking it over. It's a revolt.
We do This Week in Tech every Sunday afternoon, right after the radio show, 2:30 Pacific, 5:30 Eastern, 22:30 UTC. You can stream it live as we do it. I mean, most people don't, but it's always there for you if you want to listen or watch live at twit.tv/live.
You want to watch a football game instead? It's okay. It's okay. Then you can always watch us anytime.
I'm a fan of live streaming. I think I don't know why we do it. It's expensive and crazy, but if you like it, it's there for you. If you're watching the live stream, you can also, of course, chat with us at irc.twit.tv. They're also watching live. I don't think they're distracted by the Super Bowl yet. You can also get on-demand versions of everything we do at twit.tv, our website. There's a This Week in Tech YouTube channel. Best thing to do is subscribe in your favorite podcast application. That way you'll get it automatically the minute it's available. If you haven't taken the survey yet, I think tomorrow's the last day, so I'll just give it one last plug. twit.tv/survey21. We're going to, it's our way of getting to know you each week, or each year, I guess. We do this. It's an annual survey. It shouldn't take you more than a few minutes. Thank you in advance, but it's completely optional. twit.tv/survey21. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We'll see you next time. Another Twit is in the can.